Good morning, Julia.
Good morning. How
are you this morning?
I'm great. It is supposed to rain a little bit today and not quite be over 100 and something today.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, Sam just told me that, but I didn't believe him.
Yeah, well, that's what my little weather thing said. It said 51%, so we'll see.
Okay, well, yeah, like we believe any of the weather reports or forecasts in Oklahoma. It's really what who used to say, if you don't like the weather, wait a minute.
Exactly.
Well, we have a guest this morning that's very exciting, and she's actually a friend of Julia. So I'm going to let Julia introduce our guest today. So who do we have today, Julia?
Today we have Lauren Straka from For Heaven's Sake. She founded the business. She started it as a daycare, but then it's evolved into a pre-K and then into now elementary. And she's one of the things that we talk about often, which is an option for kids that want to learn and be educated with a biblical worldview. And I have always, I've known her I was thinking about it today. I've known her for 29 years. She babysat my kids. Her mom was the children's church director at our church. And I love Lauren and excited to have her on this morning and tell people what she's up to.
Awesome. Then let's bring her on. And good morning, Laura. How are you?
Hi. Kaylee Brown is also joining me, who is our administrator of our private school. And so she's squeezing in with me today. First, I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity today to showcase our school and kind of what we're doing here, how God has moved here in the past 20 years and really given us the opportunity to meet the needs of our community.
Well, tell us about how you got started. It's it's a testimony just what God can do when you have a vision and you pursue it. And so just tell them your story a little bit.
It probably started in my childhood when my mother would drag me along to different Bible schools, backyard Bible clubs, and really laid the foundation in me of the importance to share the gospel with children. And I was really gifted the opportunity straight out of high school to work in an industry that I knew nothing about, that helped us gain the finances to further this dream of mine. And I started a licensing agency for truckers nationwide in 1999, 1 year out of high school. My husband had a best friend that owned a business in Oklahoma City and had kind of chartered that organization both with our state and really created an opportunity for Oklahomans to provide this service to truckers nationwide, and really grew it from the ground up with legislation and different things in Oklahoma. And he probably just didn't handle the success of it very well, became an addict. And so when I came on the scene to work for him, his addiction really had taken a toll, and he wasn't present very often. And because of my husband's family's relationship with him and his family, I felt a huge responsibility to just kind of fake it till I made it in his company and learn the ropes very quickly to help carry on his business. And we kind of had a falling out because of unsafe environment, really, at one point. And God just led me to start my own business at that point. I ran that business from 1999 until 2003. And it was a very successful business financially. But in 2003, Governor Henry signed legislation that put those businesses out of service. And there no longer could be a third party helping these truckers get their registration.
So can I just ask you to, can you elaborate on that? Because that's very interesting.
It's a pretty interesting business. Truckers have to have credentials for every state for the weight that their truck would be hauling, and then also in Canada. And we basically became a third party for different trucking agencies, different trucking companies. And we registered all of their equipment, trucks, trailers, and then did like their fuel tax services. And it was basically something that was put in legislation in Oklahoma because Oklahoma was the cheapest state to register in. And because you had to be nationally registered, you could kind of register in any state as long as you had an established business. And the revenue from that was so great and the overhead was so low. And it just really was a very financial thriving business. But with the founding members that kind of got this into place for Oklahoma, a lot of them committed fraud. And the one that I worked for, he had committed fraud, not while I was working there. It was after I had resigned and started my own, really between the years of probably like 98 to 2002. There was a lot of fraud going on at the Oklahoma Tax Commission. And Governor Henry felt pressure from the other states and from legislation to say, hey, we can't do this anymore. And the guy that I worked for, that my family loved dearly, actually served jail time. And for whatever reason, I feel like God protected me and withdrew me from that situation because of what was going on there. And I had no clue. I had no clue what was going on. But because of that falling out, getting me out of that situation, but then also giving me the knowledge to create revenue for my family at the time, led the way to the daycare. And because the daycare was my heart's desire as a child, the finances that were generated from that business allowed us in 2001 to start this project. And it was kind of cool how all this worked. So legislation was signed in April of 2003 that did away with those companies. And in August of 2003, our building was complete and we opened the daycare.
Oh, wow.
Perfect timing. I mean, God just had his hand on all of it, both to finance it and to further it. And then the perfect timing of when one season ended and another began. And it really, the way that the daycare even started, I mean, we had looked for commercial property starting in 2001, early 2001, and couldn't find even 1 acre for less than $1 million to $500,000.
Oh, my goodness.
And yes, and my mother happened to be Lana McDonald, who Julia mentioned was the children's minister at Trinity and had resigned at that time to help me pursue this. And she was driving by random property, I guess, and just saw a real estate sign. And we called on it. Tap Development owned the property at the time. And we were requiring the cost and, how much land was available. and they said, "Oh, we're selling 2 acres for $130,000." And we were like, "Holy cow! This is not even. This does not even seem real. This is unimaginable that the price is so low." And then my mom was reading the contract and saw in there, the city of Yukon had a bond that you would have to also pay for the widening of the road on the linear footage of the property. And she called Tap Development and said, "Hey, we're interested. Would you guys be willing to pay the bond money for the widening of the road?" They didn't even know the amount. I don't even know if we knew the amount at the time. And they said, "Sure." I think they just wanted to sell the property. They were tired of mowing it. Whatever the reasoning was, the bond money ended up being $80,000.
Oh my goodness!
Wow! Holy
So
cow!
really, this property for about they only gained $50,000. By the time you had the 130 minus the 80, they only gained a $50,000 profit here, and it is unimaginable to buy 2 acres of commercial property in Yukon at that time in 2001 for basically $50,000. And the property is perfect. I mean, I don't have a picture of the back of our property, but it's almost like we're in the woods because of where we're located. You can see all those trees behind there in the picture. And a farmer owned a wheat field behind us. And so still there has been no development behind us. And our playground just has this great view of trees and land. But God just really provided the perfect place for the perfect price at the perfect time. And I'm not going to lie, it was hard when we started. We kind of had a joke that if we put a now hiring sign out, that we were going to get a lot of halter tops and flip flops coming in to interview. And it wasn't even people that love children. It was very difficult finding quality staff that love children and love the Lord, to the extent that there were very long hours and very long days, probably for the first 5 years. But God just continued to provide quality staff that just really kind of came in our door, almost like how we found the land, just unexpectedly walking in and saying, "Oh, I'd like to, apply." And we've really created, not we, God has really provided an amazing staff that loves the Lord, that loves families, that loves children. And over this 20 years, we've created such amazing relationships, both with families and with staff that have turned into family almost. Very close relationships that we get to help them raise their children. And so that's such an honor for me and my staff. The basis of our foundation too, and the reasoning for starting a Christian childcare center, my mom being the children's minister at our church, really had the opinion that if you can lay that foundation when they're young, if you can train them up, that really when they're old, they don't depart from it. And her thought, was Moses and his early years with his mother who loved the Lord, got to build that relationship with him and expose him to biblical truths at an early age. And then, his preschool years, when he goes to live in Pharaoh's house and all the things that happened in his life, how God really used those early years of his foundation, of knowing the Lord, to do a great work, free the Israelites, and his obedience to God came from those early years, laying that foundation so that later he would not depart from it. She trained him up, and Mom really felt that burden to instill that with the children in our community, for the parents that desired it. And here's the cool part. A lot of people don't choose us because we're Christian. They choose us because we're quality. And God has done an amazing job to protect our reputation and to bring along those that create quality childcare. And so we get chosen for quality childcare, and then the opportunity to build this relationship with these families and these children to present the gospel. And so we opened, for heaven's sakes, Child Care Center in August 11th, 2003. We're going to celebrate our 20th anniversary. And we're just super excited to have certain families come back maybe and just hug our necks and just see how they're doing, catch up with them. We're going to have a day of celebration. And the other thing that we're going to do, we have these Canvas where we're giving our callbacks that we use with the children. So, for instance, in a classroom, when the children are loud, we're just trying to get their attention. The callbacks that we use are become more, and then the children come back with like Jesus, love God, and then they say and others, do things, and then they say that matter, and then we say be a, and they repeat difference maker. And then our motto for our school is enter to learn and exit to serve. And so we will have Canvas with those words printed on them for our families to sign their last name and the years that they were here, almost like those Old Testament boundary stones, where we just want to be reminded constantly of what God has done here and the people that he brought through here and who we've got the opportunity to love and serve. And so that's coming up August 11th. But in the fall of 2018 is when we started our private school. And at that time, it was pre-COVID. This was pre-craziness, of the world. I was out in the fall of 2017 on maternity leave. And that's when a childhood friend, Amanda Lyle, stepped in for me at the daycare to basically fill my shoes of sitting up front and meeting parents and just kind of helping out where she was needed. God had her in a different season at that point and brought her back to Yukon. She was the counselor at St. Mary's in Guthrie prior to that, and lived at Pepper's Ranch. Has had one biological child and 6 adopted, and so she had the opportunity to live at Pepper's Ranch, and then in this season had just moved back to Yukon and filled that void for me. During that time, when I came back, I was like, thank you so much for doing this. And, I don't even remember the conversation, but one day we were like, we've got to do something. We've got these 2 little boys that are in pre-K this year that are going to go into kindergarten next year at a public school. And I just don't feel like I can get inside. And she said, I don't feel like I can do nannying. And at that time, it was more environment and curriculum. It didn't feel, it didn't resonate in our hearts that it was something that we wanted to put them into at that time. We really wanted to protect them in a godly, biblical way, but then also give them a great education that having more one-on-one can really provide for them. And I had different conversations over the years too, where parents just said, hey, can you maybe think about creating a school, something different? We just are looking for something different where kids don't have to sit still and be quiet all day. You have different opinions of childhood learning and how that looks in a different setting. And we just feel like, for heaven's sake, can offer that. And so God just continued to have bring up those conversations and those heart's desires and those needs. And me and Amanda, who fly by the seat of our pants, just right in that next fall and said, hey, we're going to start a school.
We understand that.
Oh, yes.
And that's the thing. When God prompts you to do something, you better get on board, because you are going to miss out on a blessing. He's going to go on to the next person if you don't want to be obedient. He's going to get a whale and swallow you up,
Right. Over there.
Yes. And so for whatever reason, we chose to be obedient in the way that God was leading us. And it really has led to something so amazing to be a part of. And we started with 9 students. Is that correct? 9 students. That first year, how many staff? Two teaching staff maybe that year. But one thing that we started with was an individual learning plan. So each child has an individual learning plan. And what that looks like is when they say they do a STAR test, and it kind of will place them where they're at, both in reading, language, spelling, and math, in those core subjects. And that allows us to place them with other children that are at the same level. Does not matter their age, does not matter their grade level, that the state has said this is where they should be.
And that's exactly right. That's exactly, two kids, just because they're the same age, they are not necessarily at the same learning thing, which that has always been just wrong. It's
Right.
like, that's not the right
Well,
way to.
and I get it. You give this general scale, and you try to
Right.
stick to it, and that's what serves the masses, basically. And that's how you can serve the masses, is by saying, "Hey, you fit into this category."
Right.
One size fits
But
all.
if they would do more, here's your level of math. So everybody that's at this level of math, you're in math right now. Here's your level of reading. Everybody that's at this level, you're in that. And when I was in school back in the 80s, you did do that for reading.
Yeah.
You had reading groups. And now that might be frowned upon, that it makes somebody feel inadequate because they're in the lower reading group. Hey, I'm going to tell you, back in the 80s, we all excelled because we were right where we needed to be. And
Right.
so that's something that we do here. We don't do grades. We do color groups. So
And
for instance, in math, you might be red color group.
Our
I'm
reading
sorry.
levels. We were talking last Wednesday, or last Friday. The reading levels for the state, for the public schools, is below 50%. I mean, it's not good.
Well below.
Well
Yes.
below. Some of them were at 0, and
It's
some
very
schools-
sad. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can blame COVID. You can blame families and lifestyles and nighttime, bedtime routines.
right.
You can blame overstaffing, or ratios of child to staff. I think all of those are going to play a part, because families don't, if they're working because of this crazy inflation, they're exhausted. They don't have the time to read, or they don't have the energy. These
Right.
teachers are in classrooms that have a wide variety or range of needs or levels are hard to teach, or too many children to have that one-on-one. And one thing that we started here in our pre-K program, you do rotate centers. It just makes sense because it gives
does.
the opportunity to have like a 1 to 3, our pre-K class, for instance. There's 24 of them to 2 teachers. They rotate through 8 centers, and that gives them the opportunity to have one-on-one art time, which is getting instructions, following directions, and then one-on-one teacher table time, which would be reading, spelling, phonics, all of that kind of, shapes, numbers, letters, cutting with scissors, all the kinds of things that you really are learning in pre-K. We've modeled that even into our older grades, where we will be able to pull out certain students that are at this level right now and go over that for their level that they're at. And then you're going to bring in the next group for whatever level they're at. And so this year, we're definitely making changes in our school too. We have one math teacher for the whole school, one language teacher for the whole school, one science teacher, one social studies, one reading specialist, one handwriting teacher. It just really makes sense to pull the kids at whatever level they're at. And you may have a 4th grader with a 1st grader. And some people may not like that, because sometimes a 4th grader is going to say something they shouldn't in front of a 1st grader. But that also gives us the opportunity to face those situations, and they have that give and take learning. Like, oh, buddy, we really need you to be a leader and model self-control and the things that you talk about, because you have little ears around you. And then it also gives us an opportunity to somewhat discuss what was said in front of that 1st grader, that maybe shouldn't have been. But then also, our parents are so good with grace that they love it, because it's almost like the one room schoolhouse.
I was just going to say that, as a matter of fact. I mean, that what you're talking about really is the one room schoolhouse model.
Yes.
And if you think about the fact that all of us came from that model,
Right.
and we did pretty doggone well in
Right.
this country with that model.
People didn't go to school past 8th grade then.
No.
They had the knowledge that they needed.
That's right.
And they thrived. I mean, look at America. We thrived.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
we've gotten away from quality. We've gotten away from relationship and quality.
Yes.
Our first year, I kept looking at Amanda and saying, when are you going to start teaching? And we're like 2 weeks in, right? And she looked and said, I can't teach them one thing until I have a relationship with them. They don't know how much I care about them. They don't care how much I'm going to teach them.
Well, it's interesting, Lauren.
For me.
Yeah, you said earlier, and you didn't quite use these words, but I think this is kind of what you meant. We've institutionalized learning, because institutionalizing anything with a large group of people makes it easier to do, because you just have them, everybody on one level. And with you've gone back, you've stepped away from institutionalized learning and back into the one room schoolhouse where relationships do matter. Because I mean, that's exactly right. I taught for a decade in public school, and until you were able to really talk to that kid, you couldn't get that kid to listen to you, especially in high school.
Well, there's no respect. There's no moral compass that says you care about me, so why should I care about you?
Right.
And that definitely makes a difference. The other thing too is, starting this school, I was really able to see the financial side of learning. And it really does not cost that much, truly.
Right.
Curriculum has a cost, staff has a cost, but it's not this huge financial thing. And again, mine was different because the daycare and the school having this relationship, this merger, allows us to share our finances and our spaces and use them wisely. But the school systems typically have that too. They have before and after care. They have federal funding, and the amount that they receive per student is way higher than the amount that I receive per student. The way that they use their finances,
that's just what they tell you.
To me. Yes, and the way that we're able to use our finances really was eye-opening, that it doesn't take that much to be quality. It truly doesn't. It takes effort.
Yes.
It takes effort, and it takes Kaylee.
$15,000 per year per student. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yes. So Kaylee this year, who's sitting beside me here, has come alongside me to be my administrator. She was our first and second grade teacher. And this year, financially, we were able to pull her out of the classroom to be our administrator. And that would be over everything, really, whether it be scheduling of events for the school, curriculum purchasing, enrollment. But then the thing that she'll get to do this fall will be our enrichment programs. And so she gets to go into the classrooms, walk alongside these teachers, and enrich every aspect of their actual curriculum. So say language. Our teacher will teach language that morning, but Kaylee will do some kind of help her with an enrichment program for the afternoon to kind of have that hands-on learning to whatever they did that morning. If it's diagramming sentences, for instance.
What? You would diagram what?
Oh yeah, we're going to learn our parts of speech. She might have language races. Back in the day we had math races. And so we're going to write a sentence, and the kids are going to race to see how quickly they can complete the parts of speech for each word in the sentence.
Yeah.
Just that fun, hands-on learning that could be competitive, and some view that as not healthy.
That's very healthy.
Absolutely healthy.
Child want to learn it because they want to succeed. It's like putting them in baseball. You train for that. Why wouldn't you train for this? And so all of those things, and then also going back to our Christian values and our Christian biblical education, Kaylee is also going to have the fruits of the Spirit this year. So each month, starting in September, our theme will be one of the fruits of the Spirit. What are you doing?
That's great.
Love. Love is in September. So we're building these relationships, and love will be our focus for September. And every morning we have praise and worship. Every morning we have a meet and greet devotion time. That's the other thing that I realized. There's so much time in a day to cover things. We're not having assemblies or fundraisers of getting to ride in the limo or meeting all these crazy criterias for some group activity. We have so much valuable time that we get to do praise and worship. We get to do devotion every single day. We get to do a closing to the day. And Amanda fostered this kind of layout of our closing each day, where it was like, is there anything that you need to ask for forgiveness for today? Did you make a bad choice? How do you need to repair this? And so they've had TBRI training, and they're really good at repairing relationships, building back that trust and that love for each other. And so those are daily activities here that also further their relationship with the Holy Spirit later in life, teach them how to have confrontation with their peers and repair it and ask for forgiveness if needed, plus gaining their academics all throughout the day. And so it's really that enter to serve, or enter to learn, exit to serve is really so meaningful as a motto to us. And it's really going to equip them both spiritually and academically to become a great adult someday. I mean, that's really our goal.
Well, part of maturity is being able to say, oh, I really messed up on that. I'm so sorry. Can you, please accept, and I remember there was a trend there for a while, and I think kids still do it, where they say, my bad.
Yeah.
And that was not allowed in my house because that made no sense to me. My bad. What does that even mean? Do you mean you did something that you're sorry for, that you feel badly about? If you do, you have to say, I am sorry. You have to take that responsibility. So, I love that, because I do think that's a huge part of maturity that, we're certainly missing, I think, in today's society, is that ability to, back up and say, whoops, I should not have done that. I'm so sorry.
And see, we don't even take.
Oh no. She froze.
State what their action was and what they need forgiveness for. And so it's really humbling and holding them accountable for their action. And a lot of times that's even to the teacher. It's not so much just to their peer, but it's to a teacher also, because, they may cheat on their spelling test. They may do all these things that need to be asked. Forgiveness needs to be asked for.
And they're kid things. Kids do that stuff. But if you don't teach them that that's not okay, they can, like you said earlier. But I do want to stop you and ask you a question. And if it's too controversial, you're just beg off. But Julie and I, our whole organization, had real concerns about the tax credit that has come up, where, the state is going to give people money to then use for private school. And I'll just be upfront, because everybody knows what we think anyway. But our concern is that any meddling at any level with the state getting involved in private education is going to, at some point down the line, it may not be tomorrow, it may not be next year, but at some point down the line is going to put some kind of a parameter or a cage in place, where where the schools then are going to have to be respondent to what the government says. Now, we're curious. Do you feel that same way? Are you concerned about that? Do you have any thoughts about it?
Oh, yes. And if you know me well, I don't shy away from controversial conversation. I don't want to go down any rabbit holes today, but when we started this school, we did look at getting accredited. I'll be honest with you. In 2018, 2019, that came up. And I have parents on both ends of the spectrum. Those ones that are the old school, we went to school in the 80s and 90s, and you had A's, B's, and C's, and you were at this stage. And that's how our brains think of, oh, you're on target, you're doing all the things. And so I have those parents that are wanting that, and that kind of comes with accreditation, and that our report cards would matter if they went back into public school. They seamlessly leave our school and go into a public school and be right on grade level because we said the child was ready. So with that, I did look into accreditation with ACSI, which is a Christian accreditation. And basically that would mean that our families could go right back into a public school if they wanted to at their level, if we said that's where their report card fell, right? And that way their child didn't have to take a placement test, and the pressure was off the child to perform at a level that would place them where the parent wanted them. Me as a parent, I don't care if my kid's 10 and at a second grade level or a seventh grade level, because that's where my child's at. To me, I didn't need that report card to tell me where they were academically, for two reasons. I was never going to put my kid in public school, but if I did, wherever he placed, he placed. Take the placement test, and that's right where you need to be, and I'm okay with that. And so some parents are not. And so we did kind of look into it. And then I'm going to tell you, with COVID, and I know that's something that you guys can talk about too, with the mandates and different things, certain accreditations were handing down mandates. That was another eye-opener to me. It doesn't matter to me whether you want to vaccinate or you don't. It doesn't matter to me whether you want to wear a mask or you don't, or take temperature checks or whatever. But if a certain accreditation is telling me I have to do that and taking those rights away from me, that's where I struggle. And my thought was, if they start there, it's going to continue and other things are going to come down on you. Yeah. Same with the tax credit. The tax credit only works in the highest amount that you can receive if the school's accredited. And then there's that tier system that knocks it down a little bit to homeschool or whatever. Basically saying, we don't feel like you deserve this amount of money if you're not in this setting.
If you haven't complied already.
Yes. So as a homeschool parent, that would probably frustrate me, because I would think, wait, and some homeschool parents are educated and have a bachelor's degree for education. Yes. So that would be no different than them being in the accredited or the public school, in my mind, if that's who was teaching them. But they didn't give those kinds of guidelines that said, hey, based on who's teaching or what curriculum they're using, then maybe we'll give you this because that's quality. But again, there's going to be that scale that says it's quality, or there's going to be that scale that says, oh, you're in the right place. And so, yes, with that tax credit, with the government getting involved, there is already that tier system that's going to push you to be accredited or push you to be whatever, to join these things that you may not want to join to gain more money. And it does always kind of maybe boil down to greed and money. I'm just going to throw that out too. Everybody's looking to save $1. And I get it. We are in a hard, heavy world right now financially. And I do believe that you would want to get the maximum amount that you could, especially if you are homeschooling. You're not working, you're not bringing in income probably, right, if you're homeschooling your children. And so you would want to receive the, what is it, $7,500, I think is the maximum on it now. Yes. And then in mine, I am a public commercial setting with teachers with bachelor's degrees. But yet, I don't choose to be accredited because I don't want to maybe obey everything that's handed down. That discredits me. And that is frustrating. I'm going to be honest. And the tier system for the families, whether you're homeschooling in my school or another private school, I don't know. Because the people that can afford the private school are the ones getting the most amount of money.
Which is odd to me.
Afford the private school or homeschooling get the least amount of money. And so maybe they need to tweak that. I will say that I messaged Representative Rhonda Baker on Facebook. That's the only avenue I have. She is from Yukon. She did teach in a public school in Yukon, and she was one of the writers on this bill. Mm-hmm. I haven't heard back from her yet. Just basically kind of asking some guidelines and really how this is all going to go out. She hasn't responded, which I don't blame her, and she may not. And let me just give her an out right here. She may not be able to. It may be a huge liability for her to come back to me personally and give me information.
Well, the way I understand it, there are no guidelines for this bill at all yet.
Yes. So I'm having a hard time finding out all the specifics, and there's different blogs that are trying to explain it. The one thing that I am understanding is accreditation. If you are not accredited, you can't if you're not enrolled in an accredited private school, you can't get the maximum amount. And that may burden some of my parents, but it may not, because the majority of my parents do not want accreditation, do not want mandates handed down. They are here because they're like-minded with me on the individual learning plan and how we do things, how we're more learn through play. And I wish I could give you a full tour of our facility. Because kids are allowed to move. They're allowed to make noise. They're allowed to work together. There's no quiet classroom really here because of the allowance of movement and noise. If they are overwhelmed and we see them stressing at all, the teachers will come up and say, hey, I think you might need a brain break. And they may go shoot baskets. They may jump on the trampoline. They may get a piece of gum. They may get a snack, a drink of water, go to the bathroom, whatever they need. They get to get up and do it in that moment. Because if you do that TBRI training, the number one thing they talk about is cortisol in these kids' systems, stressing them and hindering them from retaining and learning. And so our environment will never be that. And that could even be another part of the accreditation that they say, this is the environment you have to have. This is the volume of noise. This is the curriculum you have to use. All of those things that do not set well with our method of teaching.
And you have, and I hate to interrupt you again, but I know you've got to get off of here earlier, but one of the things that I was really struck by is you sent some testimonials from some teachers and some parents, and you deal with kids that have learning disabilities, don't you? I mean, you're not just taking what they like to say private schools take the cream of the crop, but that doesn't sound like what's going on at For Heaven's Sake. So do you want to expand on that maybe a little bit?
Let me tell you, I've got about 15 more minutes.
Okay.
So I don't want you to feel pressure.
Okay. Well, I was kind of. Yes, I need to go jump on the trampoline.
Now you get 15 more minutes. And Kaylee may interject on some of this, and or Amanda, who's sitting across the room here. We were allowed the opportunity 2 years ago to bring in, and I don't have permission from the family, so I'm not going to give names, but a high functioning autistic child who stims a lot, who needs movement, who needs noise. She'll go out and swing sometimes in 20-degree weather because that's what she loves to do. Yeah. And she may do it for 20 minutes, but she needs that in that moment. And they were enrolled in a public school. Again, I'm not going to give what school. It was a local school. And they felt like they were just kind of putting her in the corner on a tablet all day because they didn't have the manpower to meet her needs. She was in a mainstream classroom, and she wasn't getting the attention she needs. But the other thing that really bothers me there is they're receiving a lot more funds federally for that child on that IEP than they are the majority of their students. And to not give her a para or somebody to come in and meet her needs was so sad.
I'm so glad you're saying this out loud. We have so many, I'm serious. I have so many friends that I know that have disabled kids that go to public school and have said the exact same thing. And people don't understand that public schools get extra money for these kids that don't end up going to them. So I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to make sure the public understands that.
Yeah, there's that tier system, which I think the average child, the schools receive $14,000 for. Is that correct? You don't know?
I think that's about it.
And then I think depending on what the IEP is, there's, it keeps increasing. And she should have had therapists. She should have had interventions of all kinds, not just watered down work, because that's really what IEPs look like these days, is just watered down work or extra time. But they need an individual to come alongside them and continue to develop them. And they weren't getting that. And what's sad is now they're paying me. Even though they're paying their property taxes and they should have education for free, they are paying me to enroll her here because they knew she wasn't getting what she needed. And they are able to financially, but a lot of these parents are not.
Right.
And that's a bad thing. And they have to go to work and they have to continue to send their child to that environment where they will not thrive because of lack of staff, because of lack of using their funds wisely.
Because they don't love children like y'all do, I think, part of it.
Well, and it may be a teacher that does, but her hands may be tied because of because of what's already
Regulation.
occurred. Yes. And
Right.
so the
Yeah.
other awesome thing about the opportunity of getting to have this child enrolled here in our small setting, right now we're sitting at about 50 students. It allows our other typical children that don't have special needs to get to know her, get to love her, get to help her, get to experience something that maybe they wouldn't because they're not in that public school setting that has more opportunity to be around that. And so I love that they get the opportunity to be around that, and that they get to gain that empathy for somebody that may not be typical, for somebody that doesn't learn the way they learn. And so again, with these color groups and these individual learning plans, there's no bullying here. There's all acceptance of everybody's right where they're supposed to be because of how God gifted and talented this is.
Yes.
This is where they are. And God created you on purpose for a purpose. So we're going to seek out those gifts and talents, and we're going to foster and build those to create in you a good work. And we want to follow God's example there to further this good work that God has created. And so for our students, getting to know and love this child is precious. And how they give her grace in moments when she's stimming or panicking or, whatever, screaming at times. And they get to come alongside her and hold her hand or hug her or, whatever. And I'm going to let Kaylee talk for just a minute on a specific situation with this child, something that the mom said to her that would have never happened had she hadn't come to this school. And I'm referring to the birthday party.
I also have a daughter that has special needs that's been for the last 2 years. And so she's 7. And at the time she was 6 when we invited this student, to come to her birthday party. But they were the best of friends the first year that they were here, and very far apart in age and size, but they found friendship together. And for them, I feel like it was probably both of their first friendships because both of them had friends and knowing how to interact with other kids. So it came time for my daughter's birthday party, and the only person that she was so, it was so important to invite was this student to her birthday party. And so the mom, she just cried when she got the invitation. And this is the first time that she's ever been invited to a birthday party. And at that time, she was in 4th grade. It's neat to see those relationships, with a tiny, tiny little kindergartner and a 4th grader that you wouldn't get in a typical school setting. But at our school is different. And so they are able to form those friendships. So that was pretty neat.
And just that's a precious story that should be on our testimony. That these students at different ages, but kind of at the same stage, really, because of the school that we've created, they're allowed to know each other and interact and create a precious friendship that could be lifelong, really. And still to this day, if one of them's having a hard day, the other one will go up and just hug each other. I mean, they're just precious to meet each other's needs. And so not only are we meeting academic needs, but spiritual needs, emotional needs, self-esteem, all the things that we get to foster here, we see as an amazing opportunity that we get to be a part of something that God created and furthered and financed and really just equipped us. He equips us every day to get to live out this cool opportunity of education or building up the next generation, really raising up the next generation. We don't take it lightly. We take it very serious and put forth the effort in our own gifts and talents, because we fall short too in different areas. But God really has given so many gifts and talents to cover all the areas. And that's another precious thing to see as the headmaster here, how Kaylee came in her role, how Amanda came in her role, and our other teachers filling in the gaps of all the areas to complete a whole project here that furthers these students for their future.
Yes.
Just as a teacher, listening to you talk too, I get goosebumps because I quit teaching because I was, getting to the point where I wasn't supported by administration at all, and it didn't matter what I do. The parents would call me in on the carpet, and what I was teaching, I didn't feel like I really had a great ability to teach. And it's your kind of school, I think, that gives teachers like me the ability to really enjoy their jobs. And so I just am so excited to hear you talk about a school that's like, wow, I'd love to go teach there. I mean,
well, I would love for you guys to come tour, and let me open that up to the public too. At any time, anybody's available to come take a tour. And I want you to see us in the raw. I don't want you to schedule your tour. I want you to pop in and see exactly what we're doing in that moment, because we're transparent. There is nothing that is happening here that at any moment I wouldn't be proud of, truly.
Well, I'm going to pull in the picture of your building again, because it is the cutest building ever.
My favorite building in Yukon and maybe the world. I love that building, and it's just as great inside. And my oldest daughter worked there her junior and senior years and absolutely loved it, and made wonderful relationships with kids that are now grown.
Right.
That she still loves. So,
well, my mom's background before being the children's minister, she was an interior designer, and she pretty much planned this building to the square inch. And I remember her having, little cutouts of like where the table and the chairs were going to go, and where the cots were going to go, where the toys and shelves were going to be. I mean, before we opened, she had the floor plan with every little detail lined out of what went into the wet area and the dry area, and how the playground was laid out. My sister is a landscape architect, so she became part of our project too in the planning stages, to say, hey, let's have this awesome, imaginative, creative playground. Let's have grass. Let's have locust shells. Let's have trees. Let's have hills and berms, and different aspects to this that, let's have grasses that blow in the Oklahoma wind. Let's do all the things that really promote creativity at, exterior, not just on the interior, but let's have a whole project here. And we just added turf to our playground, and it was so hard for me because it was this synthetic plastic thing that we had to, because we just couldn't get grass to grow. But to me, I love the natural elements, even on our playground, and how they promote and create creativity. We have kind of a mini amphitheater with stairs. And a lot of times our classrooms are not just interior, they're exterior too. And the children might sit on those steps and do their morning devotion or their spelling. If the weather's nice, we're going to be outside, because who doesn't need sunshine? Who doesn't need fresh air? And the spelling test may be on chalk on the sidewalk. It may not be on a piece of paper that day. And that's one thing that we tell our parents. You may not get a lot of paperwork coming home, because a lot of it's hands-on learning in the classroom or outside. And the spelling test may be written in chalk on the sidewalk instead of on a piece of paper that's coming home. And again, there's no cortisol, because the kids aren't writing on that little tiny college rule lined paper even. Some of them have penmanship this big, and some of them have perfect penmanship. Yeah. But again, we're allowing that brain to have the flexibility if it needs to, that's not tightly gripping a pencil trying to stay in this little mold. Sometimes it may be written in sand in some of our sand trays. There's just different things that we do for learning that are a totally different experience. And we love to learn through play. Still, even in our older ages, they're learning through play. The other thing that we do are mission projects monthly, and that is part of our enrollment fee. You have so much that goes to curriculum, and then so much that goes to field trips and missions. And so each month our school tries to find a mission of some sort that will be up to $500. And it hopefully is in our community, if not a little bit outside of our community. I'll let Kaylee and Amanda kind of tell you what organizations that we partner with and what our plans are this fall. If we have, do you have that plan yet? The mission projects for this year?
I do not have all of them. We have like Halo. We typically go to Halo in September as our first one, which is a foster and adoptive network that does therapy for children and families. So that will be our first one. We do homeless like blessing bags every year where the kids put those together to give to homeless. We mostly go to the nursing home. I don't have it all planned yet for this year, but we do Christmas carols. Yes, we're going to tie blankets this year. We're doing life skills as our
coat drives,
one
different
of our classes,
food drives, different things like that too. I'll give a shout out to my church. Trinity Baptist has a Together We Center, and anybody in the community can donate there. Both the Manna Pantry is there and Woven, a boutique. And then they also have a free clinic for those that might not have health care. And that's a great thing in our community too.
Absolutely.
That use as a resource for help. But those are different mission projects too, because we want to teach these children about meeting the needs of others. And so that's a huge part of our learning too. The homeless bags that she mentioned, the kids make those and then each take 2 home. They're asked to hand them out when they're driving down, I-40 and MacArthur or whatever, exiting. Hey, if you see a homeless person, hand them this bag, and it may have chapstick, blanket, gloves, a snack, water, toothbrush, different hygiene needs too in there. And that allows these children to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And that's a big thing that we promote too.
Well, and establish empathy.
Yes. And even going back to our discipline and those closing days of asking for forgiveness on the empathy, we give grace. Yeah. And we will tell the children, hey, you get to try again. This is a redo. This is not something that we are going to label you for, be mad at you for. We are disappointed, yes, but you get to ask for forgiveness and we get to forgive you. And so along with those and our mission projects, we're really hopefully creating that. One of my favorite books is The Whole Brain Child. And it doesn't necessarily talk about things like this, but we want to create the whole brain and the wholehearted child because that's what's going to make them a great adult. They may not be a Truman Scholar on the academic scale, but if we can have them well-rounded in every area, that's our goal. We also have a life skills class here. And that's really going to teach them common sense because kids these days somewhat don't have common sense or they just don't have the ability to think on their own, And so we even have a STEM program here because we're really wanting them to be creative, think on their own, life skills class, gaining that common sense of anything in life and prepping them for the future.
Well, because we're running out of time. And we're running out of time. And I do want to ask you one last question that I really think is important. So I know that a lot of parents are going to watch this and they're going to say, oh, gosh, I wish I had one of those in my community. Or they may even try to come in and get enrolled. I mean, who knows? But obviously you can't take everyone. And, so do you have advice for parents? Because you have a number of children. I have a slide of your family here. You have a number of children.
Yes, I have 7. Yep. They range in age right now from 4 to 24. I started young, having that financial ability. We had 4, right off the bat. Then we had a 7-year gap and had our son, Sutton, that caused me to start the school. And then a 5-year gap, and that gave us Sloan, and then a 2-year gap, or a 1-year gap, and that gave us Wren. And it just, when I was a child, I wanted 10 children, and now I get the opportunity to be over 200 almost daily. And so thank you, Lord, for furthering my heart's desire. But what I would encourage parents to do is if you are uncomfortable and you have the means of teaching your child in a different setting, I encourage you to do so, whether that be in a private school or homeschooling. Homeschooling seems so overwhelming to people, but just get the curriculum and jump in. Hey, if you stay in your PJs all day or you miss a day, that's okay. That's life. Just start over again the next day. Do a redo, One thing here, our tuition is $5,000 yearly for full-time. We also offer part-time, which is $3,000. And that will give our families flexibility. But then we also, the only thing that we require up front is our $600 enrollment. And that's where we're covering their curriculum, their mission, and their field trips. And then when school starts in August, we allow them to pay weekly. And so if you divide 5,000 by 40, you're getting 125 weekly for tuition, or 500 a month. And we hope to never increase that tuition with the ability of merging with the daycare plus the school. Hopefully we get to keep that tuition low and our ratio still low at the same time because of the relationship between the both financially. But we do plan to expand. We hope to expand. We are asking God to expand our borders here. There is a building to the north of us that possibly might be up for sale in the near future. And so we are just asking God that if that's the case, that we would have the wisdom and the finances to further this school. We started with 9 students that first year. This year we're at 50, and we really can't take much more. I don't even know what age group we could, quickly because of space. Yeah. And so if it is God's will that we grow this, that he would provide. And whether it be us purchasing or a gift. I mean, Scott Kinney is that one of the senior pastors at Trinity. And one day he looked at me and he said, "Are you just asking God to give you something? Because he's capable." And I said, "Absolutely, he is." And he said, "Well, you need to just start asking God to just give you whatever you need to further this." Yeah. And so God is capable of such big things. We've already seen that. And we know that he holds our future. He's held our past, he holds our present, and he holds our future. And we just want to be faithful in following his direction and not get ahead of him in any way, but just let him lead us to what he has next. And that's really where we've been. And I would say that for parents, if you're feeling uncomfortable, ask God to lead you how to meet your child's needs and what's next, you know, what season is next for them. To grow up their child. And if they had any questions, they could call us or talk to us at any time, or any interest in our school.
We might actually hold on just a second. Let me put this in the comments section. So give us your phone number.
Our location is 360 North Yukon Parkway in Yukon, Oklahoma.
Whoops, hold on one second. Hold on one second. I got to get my fingers on the right keys before we, I can get anywhere.
My computer's telling me that my battery's about dead, and I've got it plugged in. So you may lose me.
Okay, 360 North
Yukon Parkway in Yukon, Oklahoma.
Okay.
And then our landline phone number is 405-350-7788.
7788. Okay, and it's For heaven's sakes.
For heaven's sake. Yeah. So really, my mom actually even came up with that name. I'm going to make her join me on camera real quick.
Hi,
she's a children's minister at Trinity for 8 years, and really laid that foundation in me, dragging me along to all of those ministries that she was a part of. And she's the one that developed the building to the square inch, created, the look and the layout. And then also comes up with our biblical curriculum for our childcare center, does Bible stories weekly. And also, I just wanted to see her face because she also still continues to work, even in her 70s. She won't retire because of her heart's desire. And she's actually the one that came up with the name. And she said, the whole reason we're doing this is for the sake of heaven. And so we're going to call it for heaven's sake. Yeah. And truly, we work for the sake of heaven. That's why we're here. That's what we're doing. It's to lay that foundation in that next generation, hopefully to develop a relationship with Christ that changes their life for eternity, for the sake of heaven.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Lauren, thank you so much for being here with us today. So enjoyed that. And just
isn't that encouraging?
Oh, very encouraging.
So encouraging.
Well, thank you for encouraging us and giving us this opportunity to just share our story and what God has done for us. And I will say, I'm just going to throw this out. We are always looking for somebody to come alongside us, whether it be financially, physically, We do take scholarships because families can't afford this always. And so if there's anybody listening that feels led to scholarship a child, we would love to partner with you on that. If you have time to donate, to come read with children or anything like that, we are always looking for people to come alongside us to meet the needs of these children in all areas. And so if there's anybody listening today or anybody involved or interested in what we're about, come see us, call us, and reach out, because why wouldn't we all work together to raise up our next generation? That's who's going to be taking care of us when we're old. So we better do a good job, right?
Amen. Amen.
It's all about it's not a good plan.
And our society needs more Jesus, frankly.
Yes,
So there you go.
that's how to change the direction of our society, right
That's
there.
correct.
Well, I think he would come back and get us faster if we'd all just get on board and choose him. That's what it's at. He's just waiting for more people to turn to him. And I think we have such a longing for him to come back. But yes, there is such a need still. He can't yet. There's too many that still need to be with him for eternity.
Yeah.
And we have to be the hands and feet every day because of the importance of this world and eternity and how heavy this world really is for so many.
Yeah. Amen. Well, thank you again for being with us, Lauren, and Lauren's mom.
Lana
McDonald. You spoke to Kaylee Brown too, and then also Amanda Lyle was present, just did not want to be on camera. And there's so many more other staff members here, both in our child care center and our school, that love the Lord and love these children. And it's such a
Judy,
blessing.
do you have the other pictures of Kaylee's family and Amanda's family?
No, I did not put those in.
Well,
Did not.
just a bundle of kids that they have of their own.
Kaylee, how many kids?
7.
Kaylee has 7, and then she's also fostering 2 babies right now that I do think she hopes to adopt if that's the option. And they love children. They love children that have needs, and they love to meet those needs. And what precious women are those two to both our school and to their families and our community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Beautiful.
thank you again, and thank you for being with us. And God bless you. God bless you, and may God grant all of your dreams
Yes.
for the school. So,
Thank you for this time and the opportunity.
all right. Hopefully, we'll talk to you again another time.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Take care.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Wow. That was fun.
I told you would love her.
Oh my goodness. That was fun. And, I think the bottom line, and she really said it so well, I thought, without saying exactly the way I'm summing it up, but I think she said it so well. Education isn't a box.
Right.
Education isn't a set of instructions. Education isn't a curriculum. Education isn't what the state says education is.
Exactly.
Education is what works for your child.
And
That's
all
what education is.
they're all different, and they have different needs every day. And she's paying attention to what each child needs every day.
Yeah. And that was so gratifying to hear her, talk about the school and about how their philosophy on education, because it's just,
It's right. It's just
I'm trying to think of how many years I homeschooled. So I taught public school 10 years and then homeschooled 15. I something like that. And it was, I think there were some days it was a shock to me to think that if I could have, just done it the way I wanted to when I was teaching public school, I would have had some different outcomes. So
you literally bought the farm
I did.
to teach your kids.
Yeah.
I mean, that was part of their learning environment. When you brought your kids home, You expanded their horizons immensely.
We know it's funny that you say that because, another one of the things that I kind of, got from Lauren is kind of what we did. We human beings in this life, and I'm just going to say in this nation, we are on treadmills. We get on a treadmill and we walk. It's the treadmill of healthcare. It's the treadmill of education. It's the treadmill of religion. It's the treadmill of friendship. We get on these treadmills and we just walk the walk. And that's what we're doing. And we never get off the treadmill to really figure out, are we on that treadmill for a reason? Does that work for us? Or do we need to take a different path? Do we need to get off the treadmill and try something different? And when we moved out to the country almost 12 years ago, we got off all of the treadmills. We got off the healthcare treadmill. We got off the education treadmill. We got off the buying the food at the grocery store in a package treadmill. I mean, we got off all of the treadmills and we've never been healthier. And I've never, as a rule, if I stay away from the news,
right.
If I avoid reading the news, I've never been happier.
Or making the news.
That's right. So I think, there's and you and I were talking about this. We're already over. So, we'll probably go over a while anyway. You and I were talking about this yesterday and then again briefly this morning. We are on a treadmill right now, which is Republican Democrat treadmill. We're on the political treadmill.
It's ridiculous. And they're both headed the same direction. Bigger government. Less freedom.
But isn't that and that's why I think, the commies love treadmills. They want you on a treadmill because they can control you. The treadmill only goes one way.
Right.
And usually it only goes one speed. It's not like you can do any, there's not a lot of room to maneuver on that treadmill.
Right.
And that's why
they like to get everybody in big cities.
Oh yeah.
And the high rises and all the things that they're building.
It's always about control, and it's always about money. I mean, there are two things, money and control. But here's the thing. So if I'm a Republican, I automatically hate a Democrat, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So we're not going to even listen to their ideas,
Right. And so does it, well, and I guess here's my thought about that. I mean, the Democratic Party at this point in time is just the Communist Party with the blue instead of red. And
who's bringing in community schools? Who's bringing in
all
of that?
But here's the crazy thing. So the Republicans, instead of sticking to their set of principles, which they, originally sort of had.
But we haven't had that yet since the Constitution was signed. So
yeah. So we've just become more like the Democrats. So instead of going to the right, everything, or to the center.
Communist light.
Yes. So to see this nonsense that's going on, with our state superintendent right now, I'll just, let's just say what it is.
And the gang wars outside.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, well, I'm going to support my superintendent because he's a Republican. Wow. Okay, so it's all about an R. It's all about, and this is the beauty of political parties. And this is what we were talking about this morning. Once you become that, you can't see, you're not allowed, because if we were to say something like, well, Ryan Walters campaigned on not taking federal funds and getting federal money out of education. And then a flyer and a handout that I just saw recently that was provided to some groups in Edmond, basically had the first 10 things that Ryan Walters done since he's been in office based off of taking federal funds.
Right.
So what, we voted for him because he said, I don't want federal funds and I want to get the federal government out of education. And these people who voted for him said, I'm for him because he wants to get the federal government out of education and stop taking federal funds. And then our superintendent that we elected, I elected anyway, I voted for, because he said, you know, I'm going to see federal funding get out of education, which ROPE has been about from day one, before day one.
Yeah.
So let's say I voted for just even that one thing. Well, the very first thing he did was come out and talk about how great he is because he got so much more federal funding even than his predecessor. But he's Republican. So if I bring that up, now I'm not Republican. I'm a Democrat.
Yeah, you're the bad guy. But we've always talked issues, and reality. And we've always, checked up on, we don't just, I mean, there's a lot of people that can make great speeches and tickle the ears of people by saying the right thing. But if they're not going to follow up by doing the right thing, then they lose you and I. But they don't lose so many.
We had one of our people, and I'm not going to out the people who said this, but I'm going to read this because I read this. I even read this today, the other day, because I thought it was absolutely so stellar and interesting. But this is a person that we know. And when we met this person, they were for vouchers. And when we gave them the argument, like you just heard Lauren Straka talk about, why she doesn't like the tax credit, let alone vouchers, and the fingers that are put on them to make them do things if they sought accreditation. People have got to understand that the state has a plan, and it's their plan. It's not your plan. And so when our person understood the argument that we make against any government involvement in religious schools, and certainly homeschools, well, this person became an advocate, for not having vouchers and tax credit and government intervention.
Yeah.
So this person read an article the other day and then made a comment on the article. And this is what this person said as a result of that. I realized yet again that internet comment sections are not effective in changing minds. Also, this voucher, tax credit appears to be a sacred cow situation. No one addressed my points. They just said, quote, you must be a union teacher, unquote. Quote, you're ignorant, unquote. Quote, you clearly don't get it, unquote. Your illogic is hard to follow. You seem like someone who would be unhappy if somebody gave you 100 pounds of gold because you couldn't carry it. They kept arguing, that's not happening, that the government is getting involved in telling schools what to do.
Right. Are you kidding me?
I kept saying it will. They kept saying, we've had vouchers in Arizona for decades. I said, universal vouchers are the problem. They said, they can be used for religious schools and homeschools, and religious schools can't be discriminated against. I said, the problem is that they will be used in religious schools and homeschool. No one provided any argument to support that government won't, other than they currently aren't. I was like, have you learned nothing about our government?
Right, exactly.
This is the thing. I mean, that person said what?
You can't have government money without government. I mean, they are going to come see what you did. and they can't write a bill to give it to you if they don't think it's already theirs.
But beyond even that, Julia, what she brought out in that particular thing, people will not listen. They will not open their mind. They will not do anything other than play partisan politics. You must be a union teacher. How many times have they told us we're Democrats because we don't just follow the party line? We're actually thinking around the situation and trying to deal with the issues, not like you said a minute ago. We deal with the issues, not the partisan politics of it. And it's such a frustration to watch these people and see these people at this school board meeting yesterday saying the most obtuse and ignorant things based on party politics when they know nothing. Nobody ever said, well, Ryan Walters has done one thing for this child. As a matter of fact, Maria Seidler, who used to work with us, stood up and basically said, hey, I've tried to get this State Department of Education to help me on 3 separate accounts with kids, and I still can't get anywhere.
Wow. Yeah.
So what are we doing here then?
Right.
What we're doing is we're throwing fire bombs. We're using the word woke constantly. We're talking rhetoric instead of actually doing anything. Less talk, more action.
Imagine if we had a for heaven's sake and in every community.
Wouldn't that be fabulous?
That is because they are making a difference for a boatload of kids in our community that will not be confused by the craziness of the world. And I just, that is the answer, what they are doing. And
well, and I think the addition
and the quality of education that she's given those kids, I know is going to be through the roof.
Yeah.
You can tell just by talking to her that education is going to be stellar. And that's actually education. She's not worried. I mean, she's not trying to convince them to do this political thing or that political thing, or all of that is not. She's teaching them love, joy, and peace.
Right.
And
gosh, that's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, teaching them to give.
And have an open mind and you know, all of the, and critically think about things and all these things. And the one thing that I do love about what her model is that she wants to expand the school, because the thing that's bothered me, one of the things, because lots of things bother me. One of the things that's bothered me over the years is we've literally, and Julia, you've been in the same room when they've said this, people will say, but I send my Christian kid to school because I want them to be salt and light and help the other kids. And I never understood why that was completely wrong and devoid of reality until I was watching something, and I don't remember what it was, but it was like a podcast or something. And the man said, why would you send a child to do an adult's work? Because the child can be influenced. The child is going to be immediately influenced by the group of kids that they're around, because parents somehow think that kids are adults and they're them. And they forget about being in school and where their influencers lie. Their influencers lie on the internet. Their influencers lie in the seat next to them. It's not, they don't get their influencing from teachers. They don't get their influencing from parents. They get it from outside of that. And if you send a child ill-equipped and who doesn't understand their Christianity, let alone know how to describe it and tell other people about that, you're putting them in a situation where they will lose their Christianity. And that's what's happening right and left today. I mean, all of the
adults, even the adults in the public school setting are afraid to do what they believe is right.
And that's an excellent point.
And so, how is your child supposed to be the one to make a difference in that environment?
You're right. If the Christian teachers won't stand up, how in the world do you think your Christian child is going to in that kind of environment?
Right.
So, well, we probably should not stay on for 2 hours today, and we're coming up on.
We can chat later without the world seeing everything we say.
Well, but I think it's important that reasonable people start really considering their thought processes about things, particularly Republican versus Democrat in this political stuff. You've got to be bigger than that, people.
Right.
You have to think, and you have to think about the issues. Do you remember, Julia, do you remember the meme of that one woman when Trump won? Remember? And she was like, remember making that horrible face, and people were coming unglued because Trump won and Trump got.
They had to have safe spaces at schools for the.
Remember that? Yeah, remember that? Republicans are turning into this same thing. All we're doing is attacking on emotion. We've lost. We're just going, well, if they're going to be there, we're going to be there too.
Yeah, gang wars. That'll solve a lot of problems.
What literally is that doing? You're getting into a partisan war, and how is that helping the education of children? Well, so really stop and think about what you're doing.
Besides that, Lauren's excellent education is costing $5,000 a year.
Yeah.
The not so excellent, as we talked about last
the unexcellent,
the unexcellent, the anti-excellent, what? Education is costing $15,000 a year per student, and what so let's do like I said, the education budget. Oh no, we are not getting the return on our investment. They like to call it an investment. I would much rather just get government out of education, and let's have a lot of Laurens.
Exactly. And if you're equipped to start a school like Lauren Straka, you go call Lauren Straka and talk to her and get discipled in how to do it yourself. And if you don't believe that we're spending money for nothing, it was a Dire Straits song. I love that song. But that's where we are in education, money for nothing. If you don't know that, go back to Friday, July 21st, where Julia and I, for 2 hours, literally walked you through schools to show people who are watching how pathetic our education is.
Yeah.
Do it.
That's their numbers. We used the school's numbers.
That's correct.
We used the Department
of Ed. The state report card is what we used. So, well, Julia, you have a phenomenal weekend ahead.
Yes. Yes.
And
gonna do as little. Well, of course, I'm expecting rain, so we'll see. The sun is shining beautifully at the moment. So,
well, and I have to tell you, I don't want any more rain right now because the humidity is killing me.
Yeah.
I garden a lot.
I know. And I garden a little, and the rain's been perfect for me because I was out of town for a few days.
But every time I go out, I sweat through everything and have to do a load of laundry. So let's just let it dry up a little bit.
So who do we have for next week, Jenny?
Oh, excellent point. Who do we have for next? I've got to check what my we're on next Wednesday, the 2nd, we have Yvette Hampton from Schoolhouse Rocked. And if you've not seen the Schoolhouse Rocked movie, I did. I watched it while I was canning the other day, and it was really, if you want to have more than 20 reasons why to homeschool your kids, watch Schoolhouse Rocked. Yvette Hampton is the producer on that movie, and she is she walks you through that whole movie, and it's great. So go see Schoolhouse Rocked. I think it's schoolhouserocked.com. So we'll have her on the 2nd, and then Amy Cook, who is an Oklahoman who has written a book, and she will be on the 4th. So it's hard to believe it's already August.
And I know, and I will be tuning in from Austin next Friday.
Oh, you will be? Okay.
I'll be in Austin.
I just found that out.
Yes, you just found that. That's news to you. Going to my sister-in-law's and my mother-in-law's and visiting them for the weekend. Kristen has some things to do in Austin, and so we're gonna go visit them a little bit. But
All right.
they have an office, which hopefully we can put the dogs outside for just a minute because they're noisy.
And you can get on from Austin.
I can get on from Austin.
That'd be great, like I did from my aunt's basement that time.
Yes.
All right. Well, everybody, you have a great weekend. Stay cool, and we will see you again next Wednesday, which is the 2nd, with Yvette Hampton from Schoolhouse Rocked. So we'll see you next week.
All right.